morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today, including an interview with Green Party candidate Dr. Jill Stein, who was arrested. So that's his really interesting interview that you won't want to miss. And I appreciate you wearing green for the Green Party interview, Briahna.
That's right. Well, let's get into some pretty heavy news coming out over the evening. Columbia University, the epicenter of the pro-Palestine protest, has been boiling over for the last week. Coming to a head last night, earlier in the week, there was an occupation of academic hall called Hamilton Hall, being renamed after a Palestinian child that had been killed in Gaza. The mass arrests took place last night with an incredibly large police presence. Let's take a look at what's been going on over the last 24 hours.
And police clearly getting ready to go in. I've covered lots of this sort of stuff around the world, and I've never seen this many police moving into one area.
Okay, let's talk about this shot we're now. Hey, Miguel, this shot we're seeing now. Where is this control room? Where's this?
This is 114th Street, east of Broadway. So they are as close to campus as you can get. There is.
They're sending it out? Yeah. Okay.
I think that newsmakers. Hey, Dave, it's Jeff with Jamie.
That might be a good question. Yeah.
Encampments have been cleared out, and this morning we learned that Columbia is already facing a lawsuit from Jewish students for failing to provide a safe educational environment, according to them. So lots happening last night. The police entering the building and arresting the people gathered there. What do you make of this?
I think it was an enormously embarrassing, overwhelming use of disproportionate force to address what was a series of peaceful encampments, and then by some estimates about 20 or so students that were inside of this building. In the past occupations of this building, whether it was over South Africa's racist apartheid system in 1985 or the Vietnam War back in 1968, never has there been this kind of an escalation from the New York City police force. The large truck-like vehicle with a ladder that was used to drive up to the building and create a kind of platform for people to walk in through a window was quite a scene. Bystanders commented on how a multi-block area in one of the busiest cities in the world were completely shut down, all for the purpose of drawing out, again, a couple of dozen students by some estimates. It's unclear exactly how many people were in the building at this point from inside this building. Eric Adams and the police department have been making a series of ideological statements. The police chose to take down a Palestinian flag that the students had erected and put an American flag back up in its stead. An interesting move for a police force that's apparently there to provide peace and safety services and not make ideological statements. At a press conference, Eric Adams and the police department alluded to the idea that these aren't students who have these kinds of weapons. These are some kind of outside agitators. The weapons in question were bike locks that are sold at the university store. So certainly something that's in the province of what students would have on hand. I think.
So you don't think it was outside agitators? You think it's the students of Columbia?
I think it's Columbia students who were agitating for their university to divest from weapons manufacturers and other investments that contribute to Israel's ability to execute a genocide in Gaza. We should be clear-eyed about what the underlying reason for these protests were. And you can see in contrast that other universities, Brown University and I believe Wesleyan University, took very different approaches to students. They looked at and recognized the fact that by overwhelming votes of students and faculty members, these divestment campaigns are popular. And they said, we're going to have a vote on divestment later this year. That's specifically what Brown University said. And as a consequence, the students dispersed. It is really telling that rather than simply even having a vote on the question, a democratic vote on the question of whether or not the university should be invested in the war machine, they would rather bring in our domestic war troops, which are not so coincidentally trained, the NYPD trained by the IDF, to come in and forcefully remove these protesters.
I mean, Brown University just had an encampment, and I agree that was a good way to end this without further conflict or violence, was to just negotiate, and they agreed to, as you said, take their encampment down after getting some of their demands met by the administration.
That didn't happen at Columbia.
The people at Columbia were occupying a building that they smashed the windows
Columbia,
of.
Let's get the sequence of events. This is so important,
Let's talk about why
Robbie.
the police have entered now. They're occupying a building.
Robbie, that's not what happened.
Let me finish. They took a janitor hostage. They smashed the windows. Why do they get treated differently than like the January 6 people who all got rounded up by the police? They're still prosecuting all of them to this day.
They should, and that's called civil disobedience. And when people believe in what they stand for, you should be willing to go to jail and pay the price for it.
And what's the problem?
The problem is that you completely inaccurately described what happened. The difference between what happened at Brown and what happened at Columbia. So while Brown University listened to the students' demands and agreed to have a divestment vote, Columbia, this is when the escalation of the building happened. Columbia said that they were going to start, they gave them a 2 p.m. deadline to get off the lawn without listening to their demands, without agreeing to a vote on divestment, and with threats to expel students that did not agree to do that at that time. So there was a completely different, the administration at Columbia shut down any negotiations with students, and at that point the students decided they had to escalate their tactics. There was a direct cause and response that should not be ignored here.
Yeah.
It should be worth noting, Barnard, which is the sister college of university right across the street, voted to divest from Israel with 90% of the votes going in favor of divestment. There's no question here about what the student body wants, and the faculty have been overwhelmingly in support of the student body as well, not just with their votes and their kind of rhetoric, but so many of them putting their bodies on the line. We watched a video yesterday of I believe she was a philosophy professor being thrown to the ground, begging the police not to crack her head on the concrete as her glasses fell off her face and she was wrangled to the ground. We're going to talk a little bit later to Jill Stein, who talks about not only her arrest, but the arrest and how she and another professor at the Washington University of St. Louis were corralled separately from the students. And that professor was dragged off on camera limp after his assault by police officers. So I think that is the reality of what's happening here. And regardless of what you think of the choice strategically to occupy a building, much like, by the way, the building was occupied again in 1985 with success and in 1968 with success, what is happening now is a disproportionate police response where it looks like a military scene in the middle of Manhattan. All of these resources, museums are libraries are closed on weekends in New York, but it's to fund this military phalanx that is being deployed, was deployed last night to arrest a handful of students that were occupying a building on a private university campus.
I don't think clearing out the building and arresting the students for occupying the building is that much of a problem, but I do have broader concerns about the criminalization of dissent taking place. For instance, this lawsuit, which I alluded to in my read here, I looked at closely, is based, and I hope you don't erupt at me for saying this, is based on explicitly referencing the university's, Columbia's DEI requirement to protect the feelings of safety of the Jewish students on campus. And so I find it interesting how civil rights law, those kinds of things which we talk about a lot, are being, again, I think weaponized wrongly, or are going to be used wrongly against free speech, against pro-Palestinian protest in ways I find very threatening to the First Amendment and very threatening to healthy discourse. And these things have been going on for a long time, but now it's going to be used by the people wielding anti-Semitism accusation, sometimes in bad faith, and it's very concerning. And the results of all of this will be greater restrictions of free speech, which I think is very bad.
I think we can judge right for wrong. I think it's wrong for police to push kids down the stairs and see their bodies rolling down the stairs the way we saw at Columbia last night. And I think it's wrong for a Jewish student sitting in their room safely somewhere to make a claim that they're the ones that are truly being victimized when so many other Jewish students are being the target of violent assault, but both at the hand of the state and by pro-Zionist protesters across the country. And I think we don't have to have some universal principle here. At the end of the day, I can use my brain to assess that people who are making false claims of being unsafe are wrong, and people who are clearly unsafe because they have blood coming from their head because they've been attacked by the police force or from pro-Zionist agitators are the ones that are in fact having their safety threatened.
More Rising right after this.